Welcome, everybody. Once again, this is Location, Mapping with Drupal. My name's Tim Erickson, St. Paul Tim on Drupal.org. I'm from the Twin Cities, Minnesota. I've invited a special guest speaker to help me out a little bit here at the end today. This is Cullen Foley. When I post the slides, I'll add his name on there, so if you want to get in touch with him, you can. I am, quick little information about me as we're getting going here. I, for a long time, spent a lot of time in the world of online facilitation. About 5 or 6 years ago, I took a brief detour and opened and ran it, or didn't open it. I took over and ran a Chinese restaurant for a year. That didn't go real well, and so I'm back in the Drupal sphere here. And I was a Drupal freelancer for a couple of years, and about a year ago, set up a local small Drupal shop with two friends. Barry and David, and we just do a variety of stuff, build, train, mentor. I'm very active in the local Twin Cities Drupal community, and have been to 3 DrupalCons in a row now, and just really love participating, giving back to the community. And I am primarily a site builder, themer. I don't do a lot of custom code. This is going to be kind of an overview session today to talk about getting into Drupal mapping, some of the choices available to you, and just sort of a little bit about my own journey doing mapping. And even as I'm learning more about this every day. Mapping in Drupal is a very dynamic area with lots of things happening all the time. I've given this presentation 2 or 3 times before, and each time I go back and look at the modules, there's new things that have been introduced, or the workflow has changed just a little bit and I have to update it. Or even now as I look at the choices I made when I first started doing mapping, some of the options available to me today are kind of different than they were just 2 years ago. And that's very kind of exciting. So again, we're just going to be doing kind of an overview of some of the tools, give you a sense of the variety of modules. There's I think you could probably say there's hundreds of mapping modules available out there. There's a few key areas or big ones that we need to know about. And I have some recipes for 1 or 2, I think, common applications that people need. And my friend Colin is going to show us a few unique case study or more special things that he's done in his work. So as I said, when I started doing freelance work, part of what got me into my first mapping project was a personal one. I was a freelancer working a lot out of coffee shops. Sometimes I needed to schedule meetings with clients or with some colleagues, and I'd heard about these coffee shops in my neighborhood that had meeting rooms that I could meet in. But I couldn't find them. I kept going to coffee shops looking for these meeting rooms. My friend that had told me about them wasn't sure. He said it's over in Shoreview somewhere. I went to all the coffee shops in Shoreview. They didn't have it. So I thought I needed a website that would sort of review coffee shops and tell me about the best coffee shops to work at and which ones had meeting rooms, which one had good power supplies, things like that. So I began the process of building the site, and it was pretty clear that for this kind of site, mapping would be integral to it. People want to find out, see where the coffee shops are, be able to search by geography or do proximity search. Put in an address and say, where are the closest coffee shops to me? So here's a slide showing sort of what we eventually developed. There's the map, the proximity search. We could type it in. We also wanted to be able to filter by different things for different categories, how they were rated for quality and other things. As I sort of dug into doing mapping, I found that there was a real wide variety. And this, again, not even close. Openlayers, Leaflet, there were some basic, the location map, just a lot of different fields. So I've sort of grouped them into a few general categories in terms of the kinds of modules and things that are available, are the ones we're going to be talking about today. There are some really simple modules with very targeted functionality. Like I'm going to talk briefly about the location map module. It's just a module that if you're doing kind of a brochure type site or something and you have one location, you want to put it on a map and display it, it's very simple, very easy. Then there's kind of the geospatial stack, or the stack of modules that start to bring flexibility and allow for a lot of different more features. The address field, Geofield, Geocoder, and GeoPHP. In combination, those four modules with views, you can do quite a bit, and that's without getting into then the JavaScript libraries, Leaflet, and Openlayers. And Leaflet and Openlayers, now they start to add a lot of functionality to your maps, and just open up a whole much larger world of opportunities. So all of these, mapping isn't easy unless you're doing some of the really easy things. So all of these, there's a lot of configuration, there's a lot of basic concepts to kind of learn and get used to. But once you get the basics down, it isn't too bad. So I'm going to start with just sort of a really basic case study. This is the kind of simplest thing you can do with maps. You just want to put your location, your store, your business, one item. And the location map module does that for you really simply. It actually provides sort of it's not even a field and a content type, it's just in the configuration for the location map module. You tell it, type in your address, and it can actually sort of drag and drop a pinpoint right on the map to say where it is. And it displays. So it has a predefined URL. You go to that URL and there's your map. You can put that in a block, I think, and move it around, a variety of things. So this is really basic. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. You can just embed a Google map into a block, something else people do, or certainly you can use some of the more advanced features as well. As you're starting to step up the ladder and want to do slightly more complicated things, an old standby, certainly I think in Drupal 6, this was the way a lot of mapping was done, was with the location module and the Gmap module. They're both still available for Drupal 7. I haven't used them that combination too much because it doesn't quite provide the functionality I've been looking for. I did go in and test it, and it they generally still work. The basic concept with the location and the Gmap module is the location module will give you a sort of its own custom address field. It'll do the geocoding, translate that to latitude and longitude, and then you can use the Gmap, go into views, and use the Gmap to create a view of your various locations. So here was a quick, simple map I did, just using that custom field provided by the location module and using a views display. And again, if we go back, just picking for the display, Gmap became an option. So as I mentioned earlier, there's this. As we're going a little bit further up the scale, we get to the core mapping stack in Drupal. A lot of other mapping modules will call for these. These can be used in different combinations, but the address field module, the Geofield module, the Geocoder module, and the GeoPHP module. I'm going to talk briefly about what each one of these is doing to give you a better understanding of what their role in the whole process is. So we start with the address field module. How many people have used the address field module? A lot of people. It has uses beyond mapping. One of the core benefits of the address field module is it provides custom fields, right, for all sorts of different countries. So I've got Germany, the U.S., and Antarctica here. So exactly, if you want to put locations in Antarctica on the map, you have the exact right fields to do it. The other thing about it is it's really good in views because you're able to really drill down and create views with, say, and display just the area code or just the city. So it provides a lot of flexibility. So there's definitely uses outside of mapping. It's a key one within the mapping field. But it's not required. You can put your address into a text field or other things and still convert it, but using the geocoder module. The Geocoder module takes addresses and converts them to latitude and longitude, and which you're going to need to display on your map. The Geofield module is a field you put on a content type that stores that latitude and longitude information. So you've got to get take the address. The Geocoder, you don't actually do anything directly with the Geocoder module. It's a dependency of the Geofield module to, if you want to convert. And you can pick various different geocoding services, Google and others, to do that. The GeoPHP module is another module that doesn't have any direct functionality to you. It's a library of features that the other mapping modules need, and so most of your mapping programs are going to require this. So we can put this together now, and I'll talk just about how we actually put my coffee shop map together using those 4 modules. I originally did this in Openlayers, and we'll talk a little bit more about Openlayers later, because at the time it seemed like Openlayers was almost required to do this. Since then I found a number of other ways to do it, including this, and I think this is a more straightforward and simple way if that's all you want to do. If you want to put a bunch of locations on the map, maybe do a proximity search, a fairly basic set of things, this is a really good combination, and it's not as confusing. Once you dive into that Openlayers interface, it's like the first time you got into views and started doing contextual filters and things like that. It's hard. So the first thing I did was really just create a content type and add the address field. I can't see my. Can I take this off? So we've got you're going to have to select. We add the address field, and we add a geocode field to each node or to each content type where you're going to be doing this. The geofield is going to store the data, and you have to tell the geofield how to where to get the data. It's pulling from, in this case, the address field, and tell it what service, what you want to use in order to do the geocoding. So we go ahead and add from the user's point of view, when they go ahead and add, they're given the full range, add the city, street, zip code, different fields for each of them. One of the drawbacks of the address field module is if you require the address field, all of those sections are required. So if you require an address and somebody doesn't know a zip code, it gets difficult. But if you don't require it, then you can just enter. If you just enter like a zip code, it'll just put the zip code on the map. You don't need the entire address. And then all you have to do once you've done that is go into the Manage Displays for that content type, and for the geofield, for the display widget, put down a map. I believe it's the Geofield map. And there's a whole set of, you can specify things like zoom settings and how you want it centered, how big the map should be. And then if you go back and view that node, you've got a display of that particular node on a particular map. Now you want to take that and display those in a group. We go to, we can just go and make a view now. And for the format, we're going to pick Geofield map. And for the fields, we just have to make sure that we include the Geofield in there. If we've got pop-ups, we want to make sure to include anything that we want to appear in the pop-up. And in this case, we were doing a proximity filter. So under the filters, the Geofield module provides a proximity field that you can use to filter, and you can expose that. And so once you've exposed the proximity filter, you can look at that view, and you really get this, the map, with your exposed filter, and you can sort it out. So that's my quick sample on Work Latte. This was the map I eventually generated. Over 3 months, I visited every one of those coffee shops, plus a few more. So, and following with this sort of high-level overview here, we've got as you want to add features, the two big options we have are Leaflet module and the Openlayers module. The benefits, the primary benefit of the Leaflet module is a library for really pretty maps. There's a variety of maps I'm going to show you in a minute. It has a lot more. You're not just for like Openlayers. The default maps are Google Maps, Yahoo Maps, things like that. With the Leaflet map, they have a whole library of really attractive maps and some custom features. Leaflet is much lighter weight than Openlayers, so it's better if you don't need a lot of functionality. You want some good-looking maps. It's a really good option. Openlayers is a very heavy, brings a lot of code along with it. But provides a lot of functionality and goes pretty deep. And Colin's going to show us a few examples in a little bit of some stuff he's done with Openlayers. There's two sort of other popular mapping modules that sort of work with that earlier stack of modules that I talked about and expose you to either the Leaflet library or the Openlayers library without having to delve sort of all the way in. So if you're looking for some of the functionality that you want from the Openlayers or Leaflet, but aren't ready to sort of dive all the way in, I think looking at either get locations or the IP geolocation views and map modules is a good idea. They have there's a lot of different settings there to play with. And this is, so yeah. Here's, with the Leaflet module, there's a submodule called Leaflet More Maps, and that really provides you with access to all kinds of different maps like this. And so these are all just changing the map settings in the settings. It's pretty straightforward. So you get a lot of, I just did a website a few weeks ago where we used this map for a really simple, wanted to show 5 or 6 locations on a world map and have it just look kind of attractive. So some of the features that come with Openlayers include things like clustering. One of them is polygons. If you want to add shapes to your map. So basically here what I did is I just created a new node. I didn't even put in an address field. We just included the Geofield module, or the Geofield on the content type. And then basically, and for the widget, instead of normally I would connect the widget to the, normally I would connect the widget to the address field directly, so it would pull data from the address field, change it to latitude and longitude, and then put it on the map. In this case, I want to draw a shape, so rather than use the address field as the widget, or pull from the address field, we just created an Openlayers map right on the node. And yeah, we can see that there in the setting, and then in the display, we want to display the thing. So now when I go as an editor to add a node, it actually displays a map here for me, and you'll notice sort of up in the upper right-hand corner there, I have a polygon tool, a line tool, and a point tool. And the user can just either drag and put a dot right on the map, or they can actually draw a shape onto the map. And then when we go to look at the node, there we have the shape right there on the node. It's displaying. I haven't actually implemented this yet on a map. I used to work for an organization called edemocracy.org. This is a kind of a use case for that. We had neighborhood issues forums all around the city, and we wanted a map where somebody could click on their neighborhood. Information would pop up about their particular community, and and link them to the forum for their neighborhood. And in this case, we could just create a node for each neighborhood, draw the map, and display them with views. So we have a couple of resources that I've I've drawn heavily from here are listed here. There's a location and mapping group on groups.drupal.org that is pretty active, a great place to ask questions. Lots of stuff going on there. I have a link to a comparison of the mapping modules that shows you some of the main categories that we've talked about today and compares sort of the pros and cons to each of them. We have, there's an article here that talks a little bit about the background stuff that's going on with a lot of this mapping. And there's another a link to a list of like 100 mapping modules that you can go through and provides information for them. So with that, I think I'm actually going to invite Colin up here, and he's going to talk just a little bit more about a couple of specific projects that he's done with Openlayers. And we're going to have to quickly just sort of switch out of.
So while Tim's switching that, hi everyone, I'm Colin Foley. I work for Lehigh University in Pennsylvania. It's about an hour north of Philadelphia. So we've been doing we have a GIS specialist on our web and mobile services team, so I've worked with him to do a bunch of stuff. But just to get a general sense of people's familiarity with mapping in depth, how many of you are familiar with feature layers, or what a layer is? Or like a base map or base layers? Okay, great. So we'll look at a little bit of some fancier stuff that you can do using Openlayers and connecting it with some different things. So there's two sites that I'm going to show you. One is Marcellix here, which it's short for the Marcellus Shale Research Exchange. So I work at a university, got a lot of faculty interested in research. They wanted to build this site so that they could get a sense of what was going on in the research community centered around Marcellus Shale, which is it's kind of a controversial topic. So basically this site, people can submit research projects. And when they do that, they select where their research was done. So we built a map for them using Openlayers, and working with the GIS specialist, he's like, everything is spatial, right? Whether it's research or a paper, like everything happens somewhere. So here you can see we've got research by state, and really we just have like New York and Pennsylvania for now, but there are shale beds all over the U.S., so this may extend into other types of research. But using views, we've implemented some counts on the states using some like node references or entity references. Each of these research projects gets attached to a state which has a geometry, it's a geofield, and it stores the geometry in like well-known text, which is a type of spatial storage, or spatial description, really. And then we drew that back to the states and did an aggregate. How many projects are here in each of these? So let's zoom in a little bit, or a lot, pan over here. So for these states, you can select and see how many counties there are and the number of projects in each of those states, and we've got the legend going there. And then if we switch into, let me scroll up, there's also a county map. So we also tug it down into counties so you can see where research projects are being done. And, we loaded up the spatial information for the counties, and that's how we got these polygons. And you can define, you notice that like I have the option for these to be different colors. So Openlayers, all within Drupal, gives you the ability to change the colors of your feature layers and have different styles for all your different layers. You can have different maps. It's very extensive. Like Tim said, it could be a bit daunting, but it's pretty cool. So you can do stuff like this and then have your pop-ups with like views inside your pop-ups for let's go look at this research project. And then it's got information on the project. You can see it's a research exchange. It's not really beautified here at all. It's, field labels and field values. Not that, fancy. So that's Marcellix. And now let me tell you about Memories, or Still Looking for You. This is centered around Lehigh University, and it's like a digital humanities project based on people's memories of place, right, and how places shape us. So on here we have a map, and this map is mostly point-based, and it has the points around our community and around the university. And there's also a tour system. So beyond points, if you look at a specific tour, like if we take the Lost Neighborhood, which is a great example, there's also an extent. So people can go in, the maintainers of the site can go in and draw this polygon. And Tim showed some of that, how you can draw a polygon on a map and show like, hey, this is the area that all these points or all these lines are contained within. So the Lost Neighborhood is kind of interesting because back in the 50s or 60s, Lehigh University expanded into a neighboring community. So the Lost Neighborhood was like literally a neighborhood that doesn't exist anymore. So if we look at this tour, if we look at like a location on the tour, say Adams Street, you can see this is actually a line. And this is, has anybody heard of the site Philaplace? Philaplace.org is, it's the same kind of thing, but it's all centered around Philadelphia. So you've got a street, people have submitted photographs that they had from their family albums and that kind of stuff. If we look at the map and we zoom in here to the Lost Neighborhood, something else we've been able to do with Openlayers is incorporate our own base maps. So here you can see those streets are drawn. So I'm going to switch the base layer on this map to be 1938. So we have some old aerials, which is pretty cool, from 1938 of our area, our part of town. And you can see the streets and the neighborhoods. And as you go through here, 1958, okay, still a neighborhood. When you get into 1971, you can really easily see, wow, that's a big change, right? So Lehigh bought that land, tore down some stuff. It's all different now. So that's a drastic difference, and Openlayers supports doing some of this. So those are two examples. If you want to talk more about them, I'm happy to get in depth with the layers, how people are editing this, how it's configured, how you can set up your maps, all that kind of stuff. But I think we have like 15 minutes for questions now. Or do we have, because I can show some of that stuff.
Yeah, I think we're actually more than...
Are we? Okay, so if we have half an hour, right? I think we have half an hour left. So you guys want to see some insides, internals? Okay, let's log in here. Yeah, or if anybody has questions, please go to the mic. We can take questions now, too, during this part. So here we are, logged in. We have our admin menu. And I'll just show you, to start with some of these content types, right? I went over the tour a little bit, and the tour, if we look at the fields for the tour, has an extent. And that extent is a geofield. And you can see the widget for that is an Openlayers map, which is what you get when you install Openlayers. There's also a tour path. Now, this doesn't have any routing capabilities, so we didn't set up anything with like, hey, this is the first stop, and this is it, and these are the paths you should walk to get there. Routing is like a lot more complicated. So that might not be something you do in Drupal. It might be something you do somewhere else and bring that layer in. So if we look at this, let's edit this tour extent, if I can somehow get over there. There it is. All right, so the tour extent, it lets you choose, as we scroll down here, there's some help text that we put in. Always a good thing, put your help text in. And you can choose like what you want people to be able to draw on this map. It's more like you can choose what you want people to be able to store in the database for this particular spatial thing, right? So we've got, and it gives you like the default value. It'll show you what it's like. So you can choose, you can click around, say, South Mountain, Lehigh University, double click, and that creates your polygon. And it's the same thing, drawing lines, you click and then you double click. And dropping points, you just drop them around. And then I think, I forget how to delete them, it's been a long time, but you can delete them in these maps and you don't have to refresh your page and do all that stuff. But so that's an example of the edit interface using the Openlayers map. Now, since we're talking about the maps, let's go into structure under Openlayers and look at our maps list. So these maps, it comes with some default maps, and usually what you do is you clone a default map, and then you put your customizations in. So there's a bunch of maps, and let's see here. That's pretty good. It's got all the tables. Is that all right? That looks all right over there. So there's the default, which comes with OpenStreetMap. You see MapQuest. You might be like, ew, MapQuest, what? But, Google and Bing, their base layers and stuff are pretty proprietary. Like, you got to make sure you're okay with that. But MapQuest stuff turned into, I think, OpenStreetMap, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. But that's like safe land. You can use those. You don't have to worry about usage rights and stuff because they're open. It's kind of that FOSS mentality there. So OpenStreetMap is there, and you can then extend that and stuff. And we look at editing a map because, let's say, for your little widgets, like if you want people to add coffee shops in your town, you want to configure the extent of that map. So as we scroll down here, you've got all sorts of configuration options for the center and the bounds, where the center point is, restricting the extent. Then you can choose layers and styles. We've got some map projections. Who knows about map projections? Okay, cool. So some of that is like a little hairy, and it's getting better in Openlayers with Openlayers 3 and the integration with 3. But here you can choose your base layers that are available. Let's see if I can. No, not really. And as we go down, there's these things called overlay layers. And this is like, I don't know if you recall, if you looked at when we were editing that map, it had the points on it already. So you could see where locations were when you were editing a tour. That way it helps you to draw the extent around it. So you can choose which layers to put them on. So let's jump from maps into these layers and say, well, how are these layers defined? Tim already showed that the layers are, well, some stuff you configure in views, right? And these layers, it's the same kind of thing, happen in views. So if we want to look at, like, a good example would be, we've got featured locations as a layer, or tour path. So let's look at featured locations as a view. Let's go check it out. The views list. Featured locations should be at the top somewhere. But that could just be the name of it. So let's check out some of these. I haven't been in here in a long time, so my apologies. Block page. All right, well, we're just going to dive into one and see. Okay, right here. All right, so locations by tour. This is an Openlayers data overlay, right? In views, you have things like page, block, maybe EVA field if you've used EVA, which is a sweet module. Other things as well, you might have like RSS. You have all those different display handlers. So if we go in, we have these different overlays, right? And here's the tour path overlay. So you see you choose a format, and then there are some settings on here, right? And you choose a data source for the different options. And this is how it all gets put into like what is called the map controller. Who knows what a map controller is? Probably those same people who like raise their hands for the other stuff. When you talk about the libraries, like a Leaflet library or an Openlayers library, what you're usually talking about is what's called the map controller. And it's got all your sweet behaviors of pan and zoom and click this thing and toggle these base layers and all that stuff. That's your like map control. That's the JavaScript that powers all of that. And these data source configurations is like, it all ties it into the map control, so then Openlayers or Leaflet can take over and do what it needs to do the cartography part, the mapping part. So, you're choosing your type here of lat long or bounding box or well-known text, and then you choose like which fields you want, which one should be the title for when it pops up. You can have your pop-up content here as well. The Openlayers like feature pop-up stuff adds extra functionality. There's a lot of depth you can get into with that. And then you choose like what fields are in your view. And this is configured on a contextual filter to say, hey, just show me the locations that are on this tour. But what this comes back with, I think this is, you can see here, it's configured to come back with all. So it's basically like a giant rendering thing. I think it's, I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want to be wrong. But you can look at your preview here, and it's all just kind of raw data, right? It's a data overlay. And the Openlayers module comes in and reads it and processes it to get your features from your layer on your map. And those would be your locations, your points, your lines, your polygons, whatever. So that's an example of like how you would set up a data overlay. And then you can use views to actually create the page that has the map on it. Right? So we've gone through like a lot of different levels. So let me back up and review where we've gone, if I can recall this from memory. So first we looked at the content type, and we saw, hey, this thing has an Openlayers map widget for the Geofield. So you can use a map to store the information and have content editors be putting points on a map. Then we were like, well, how did you get there? So where'd that map come from? So we went and we looked at the map, and we saw some details about the map and saw that there were layers that got on that map. Then we came over to views to look at the Openlayers data overlay. But now you might be wondering, like, okay, I've got my map, I have my stuff on it. How do I get it output to a page? That's through another view, and the format for that is an Openlayers map instead of an Openlayers data overlay. And you can spit out those maps not using views, but it's pretty hardcore to write the code. And I have some examples of that buried somewhere if anyone's interested in that. And we ran into that because views, if you want to put Ajax inside of your map pop-ups, views is like, no. You cannot have nested Ajax calls inside of views. So if you're rendering your map with a view, you can't do any Ajax inside your content descriptions because it's like, hey, Ajax in a view, no thanks. Because I already handle my own Ajax, right? Views, filters, doing Ajax stuff. So you can programmatically put out these maps, but the like default path that Openlayers provides is, hey, make a view that's an Openlayers map, and then in here in the settings, I don't even think there's like, you just choose your map, because over at your map, which we looked at, you choose what layers you want. So you don't, on the map itself, there's very little configuration. It's kind of like using the views hammer for every nail. You know, like, it's kind of like we're going to use views to render the map when, you know, there's a little bit there because you can take the contextual filter and it passes it to the data overlay. So there's some integration, but this is how you would get maps on the page. So this is kind of walking through this whole, we've got locations, we're taking an argument, that's the location toured. Locations are attached to tours. So we just take a look at that stuff, look at the location, manage fields to see what's there. You can see we have your usual title description. We've got a node reference that goes to the tour because the tour has the extent and the path, and whether it's featured or not, the date that the locate, because some buildings like don't exist anymore, so we have dates in there, an image, and the type for that. And I'm like, where's the geofield? It's the point. It's right here at the top. So, you know, locations have a point, but they also get attached to a tour. So there's some relationships there. And I showed you tour already. And then we have this model of contributions getting attached to locations. Like, hey, I have a memory, you know. I went on a scavenger hunt in this dorm room when I was a freshman at college or whatever, and that gets attached to a location, and that's all Drupal content stuff. So, you know, our GIS guy is like super GIS-y, ArcGIS, hardcore, can do really awesome stuff with importing county, spatial data and stuff, so we can do some of this. But it's a little bit, you know, you want to use Drupal for the CMS. Right? That's the power, right? It's very easy for people to add content and edit content and manage content. So, you know, Openlayers provides this way where you can do everything else normal, right? You can have, like, I have memories that go to a location. Well, use Drupal, reference it, build it all that stuff. use the permissions, control it, and then use this almost like a GIS, like this geospatial stack with GeoPHP, Geofield, and even Geocoder if you want to use it. You can build that stack, put a map control like Leaflet or Openlayers on top of it, and bring the power of mapping like right in to Drupal and have them merged instead of having some of your stuff managed separately. Questions? For Tim or I?
So I've got two questions. The first one is relating to the custom map that you designed yourself from old photos. And my question there is, was that managed by Drupal, or are you using another tool to host that and tile that and so on?
Yeah. So the map that has like the ancient aerials? Yeah. So that's being served by ArcGIS, and we are consuming that. So when you go to Openlayers Maps, and if we look at the map, I'll show you how it comes in. I forget what it's called, but it comes in as like an XYZ. And there's the format. Actually, I should probably look at layers because I think that's where it's at. Okay, so the layers, you can see there's a type for XYZ. And if we edit this, you'll see the URLs for where these aerial photos are coming from. Okay, so we have gisweb.cc.lehigh.edu. And like I said, this is ArcGIS, which is an ESRI product, super proprietary, Microsoft, but there are tools available in the open source community to do some of this stuff. But you can see here, like, this is really where the magic happens with the ZYX as an XYZ layer. So you basically have this template, and then Openlayers has the support for, hey, I support XYZ layers, just tell me where they are, and I'll bring it in and put it on my map projection and make sure everything is cool.
Thank you. And my second question was about using OpenStreetMap, and you're bringing in a lot of the data, and you have users who are adding coffee shops and so on to the map. Have you seen anything that pushes that data back to OSM to contribute back?
Yeah, I haven't seen any of that from Drupal saying like, hey, I've got a bunch of stuff, let me push it into OpenStreetMap. I think that sounds awesome. I think OpenStreetMap would be like all about that, right? Because you want collaboration in this kind of stuff. But no, I think most of the stuff is about consuming, right? We're going to pull from OpenStreetMap, and you can grab their layers wherever they're at and bring them into Openlayers. Thanks for your questions. Other questions? Please go to the mic so it's recorded. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Have either of you tried going in the direction of regional-based content, like displaying stuff based on region?
Yeah, sure. So, actually, I hope it's still up there. But, I mean, you can basically choose, that's kind of in your content model. Yeah, so this is a very basic map, but our International Affairs Department had established some regions like way back a long time ago. It was a big debate to choose the regions. But here you can see we've got big regions. But essentially, like all a region is, you're defining what it is as a title in Drupal, and then you're giving it a spatial component, right? So this is just a polygon. Now it's like a pretty slick polygon that's pretty well defined because it's pretty huge. But, you know, and then in these regions, you got pop-ups with information about, you know, the footprints of international affairs from whatever. Is this kind of what you're thinking, regional, or?
Well, I was thinking, like, for example, you have a banner that you want to only show to people in Buffalo, New York, you know?
Yeah, so like contextualization, personalization, setting a location. Tim, do you have anything you want to say about that? Yeah, so I think some of that, it still goes back to like you manage that yourself, right? I think that you can set up maps that have extents for specific regions, and then you can do some location using like HTML5's, what's it called? I think it's called geolocation. You know, you can read that from the user. You can look up like MaxMind is an IP address database that you can use to do some of that. So then you can do that customization yourself. And I mean, you might even be able to say, generalize it, right? So I got this IP address, it's in this area. Do some automation to say, okay, well, if it's in this area, let's make that the center point and bump out the bounds. And then you can have those maps centered in those different areas. I mean, I would probably say start with geolocation because it gives you the allow, deny. It's very user-friendly. It's getting more and more supported, obviously, with HTML5 stuff. Other questions? All right. Well, thanks for coming. Feel free to come up and chat with us.